Hey there, welcome to ATL and 29, a podcast that looks at the NBA from the starting point of Atlanta. My name is Kevin Chennard. I'm here with Glenn Willis and Tyler Jones. Uh, we're recording in advance of the draft here, but also amid the finals. Uh, I know when we left off last time, I think we were just starting to creep into some of the bigs. There's a lot of bigs in the draft. They all have these wild all over, the skill sets are kind of all over the place, different types of bigs.
We got some news too, Kevin.
The Hawks, yeah, we got some news too. I mean, yeah, we have some news. Let's start with the news. Sure, let's start with the news. What do you think? You want to announce it?
Um, so I don't have their names, but the Hawks hired. Basically, it seems like the Hawks hired two guys to be under Ansi Salah, and probably can infer that Ansi's just going to be the head honcho. They're not going to. They're probably if they haven't done it. They while they're still saying they're still looking for a president of basketball operations. Um, you you wouldn't if you're hiring a president of basketball operations, you wouldn't be hiring somebody who would like let the second guy already hire multiple people under him to work for him. So like if they do hire a president of basketball operations, it might be in like name only, but I suspect that Onsi going forward is just going to be the guy. And these two new hires that the Hawks got seem pretty promising based on their resumes. So I don't know. I just find it to be more positive news for the Hawks. I felt like they did their due diligence during this, and they found some more talent, executive talent, to add to the room.
Glenn?
Yeah, I mean they weren't names that ever popped up in any reporting along the way. So that was a little bit of like, okay, you got to go, see what's written about these guys out there and stuff like that. I know the Pelicans have largely drafted well. They haven't always managed cap space to kind of get everybody, all the good players onto their second contract. And that they're an organization that's constrained financially, I suppose. But you hope that that's there's a bump in ability to kind of really nail draft picks because you just look at the Pelicans' track record in that area and seems really solid. So I know Hawks fans wouldn't mind seeing the Hawks start to kind of dial in and really find players that fit what they want to do going forward. So on the analytics side of things, I mean, it's hard to know from a distance what methodology they're using and how proprietary it is or whatever that might be. But I think sometimes the default view Hawks fans have or observers of the Hawks organization have is it's hard for the Hawks to pull talent into the organization. I think this was something that was the opposite of that. They're able to kind of draw some fresh perspectives and some guys who have been in some situations where they've contributed. So, got to hope that that's a positive for the Hawks going forward.
Yeah, and the names are former GM of New Orleans Pelicans, Bryson Graham. He's going to be the vice president of basketball operations. And then Philadelphia 76er executive Peter Dinwiddle is going to be senior vice president of strategy and analytics. And like, I just want to note on Bryson Graham because they the Pelicans have drafted and signed guys outside of the box, so to speak. Like they don't, and they've gotten really good players doing that. And so, like particularly as undrafted free agents, undrafted guys, like they've done a really good job with Najee Marshall and the former Georgia Tech point guard who I'm blanking on,
Alvarado.
Alvarado. Yeah, Alvarado. Like and like drafting Trey Murphy with the 15th pick, that was kind of I mean, at the time, it's kind of an outsider pick. Like he was a 4-year letter player who transferred to Virginia, really only had 1 or 2 years of success, and like Trey Murphy's one of the best wings in the game, and he got that from the 15th pick. So it just goes to show like Bryson Graham has his own methodology that has a solid track record. I mean, he drafted Dyson Daniels. I mean, or he was in the room and pushed to draft Dyson Daniels. So I just think overall, uh, you get more, scouting talent, something that maybe had been lost since they let Travis Schlenk go is, you know, drafting for traits has been good for the Hawks recently, but they haven't, the unrestricted free agent, rookie free agent route hasn't been as strong, and hopefully he can clean that up as well as boost their first round pick talent.
All right. Yeah. I mean, I've always found it difficult, with executives who aren't at the top of their respective food chain for their organization to be able to separate what they've done from what their supervisors or peers have done. And so, I think it's hard to evaluate this, but with the Pelicans, I kind of to go with what Tyler was saying, like I feel like they've done a really good job of drafting defensive talent, or at least, drafting players who are going to fit their defense and aren't really going to be in any way kind of a debt. Like they know what they want out of their defensive players and have drafted that and have done very well at that. So yeah, I think it's a good sign. I think it's notable that pretty much Ansi is going to be the guy in all likelihood, and I think that's a wise choice. So, yeah, I guess I don't sound very excited, but I think it was I think it was the most likely scenario, and this goes along well with that too because it's not the one big name kind of splash, but the Hawks are they're kind of willing to play with depth in their executives and pay a lot of guys. And that's, that's a different way of sort of manipulating the system. It's not, going into the over the past the first apron or second apron or whatnot, but it's a different way to uh, you know, try to use your resources and be efficient. And I think they're probably doing a pretty good job with it. So let's see here. Let's skip the final so we make sure we get a few of these draftees in. I think when we left off last time, it was time to talk about the bigs. Um, are there any bigs that you kind of want to get off your chest here and make sure that they get covered tonight? You got one, Tyler? Who do you want to talk about?
From a big, let's go with Hansen Yang because I find him the most intriguing. Uh,
Okay.
Big center from China, and like offensively, to me he has it all there. Like great handle, great awareness with the ball in his hands, great passer, good finisher with both hands. Decent lob threat, though he's not bursty. But I mean, when you're legitimately 7'1" without shoes, you don't have to be bursty to finish above the rim. So, like, and a better athlete than probably people realize. And that really shows up in his. To me, it shows up in his finishing. He looks to like go through guys when he's trying to score, and like he's super physical in that way. So like offensively, I have no complaints. And if he didn't have some of the worst tape I've ever seen in drop coverage from a big, I'd be like, because I was super high on him when I was watching his offensive tape. Then you watch him on defense, at least in the CBA, like he really struggled um, in pick and roll drop coverage, like really struggled. And it was bad technique combined with he's again not the most explosive guy, so his back pedal isn't the best. And I felt like he was really too passive sometimes in that when you're playing that two-man game where he's like not he's not in the spot where he needs to be. If compare it to how Hardenstein plays pick and roll defense now, where he will fake like he's defending. He will always keep the big in front of him, first of all. But at the same time, he's constantly aware of the ball handler driving towards him and not just giving up the easy stuff. And like that's a hard skill to master. Hardenstein didn't have that when he was a rookie. He didn't have that 2 or 3, 4 years into his NBA career. So like I'm not ruling this out for Hansen Yang that he can become a good drop coverage big because at his size he has to be good at that. Like you don't you even though he has some actually decent tape switching out on guys, like when you're that big, the benefit of you being that big is you consistently being around the rim and affecting shots. If you can't do that in drop coverage, you're just a like, okay, you're this switchy big, but like I'm not getting the value of having a super size center. Cause like if you're having to play up the floor all the time, guess what? I have to constantly play bigger, less shooty power forwards to support you on defense. And that's really the give and take with Yang. The good news is the Hawks do have those types of players on the roster. I feel like to me that they have the infrastructure to support Yang, and like I would still take the gamble at 22, but I said earlier on an earlier podcast I'd take him at 13. 13 is probably too high just based on his like complete like you got to build him up from scratch defensively, and so like but at 22 as a project I'm with it, but there might be better players that I would probably still take over him, but he's a good high risk high return type of player to me because the off like again the offense is almost I feel like it could be special. Like there is an outcome where he's like a special offensive big man the way Sengun is. Um, and so like that's something you just gotta have in your, you gotta keep in mind when evaluating somebody like Yang. Because offensively, like again, you just don't see this type of processing from bigs uh in the NBA today, except for the uber elite ones offensively. So somebody to keep in mind, but we'll see how the draft plays out. But I'm still a fan of his game.
Glenn, do you have thoughts? You want me to jump in? How do you want me to deal with this?
Go for it, Kevin, and I'll jump in after you.
Well, okay. I mean, I'm gonna make a mess of it because, like, how do you feel about Yang compared to somebody like Kalkbrenner? Like, because I feel that way about his defense. Like, I feel like he's kind of he plays 2-3 zone a lot. He's just kind of afforded the luxury of kind of standing under the rim, and I don't know that I would feel good about him in drop coverage. Like I just and they're similar in a way, right? Ye and Kalkbrenner are the same size. I think they're going to have the same kind of role in the NBA. But he's like 3.5 years older. I thought that Yang did a better job in the combine than he probably did in his CBA games. Like I thought
Yes.
managed the space reasonably well then, and it's funny because we always compare these players to like the best version, the one that pops into your head, which they pop into your head because they're famous. But like when Marc Gasol started, not really, people weren't really sold on him. Like it took him a long time, and he didn't have like he never really had like the foot speed. But when you say like he's a special offensive player, like when you look at somebody like Yang who can pass like he can at his size, like there's just not that many big passers that have that kind of feel. So, he can really be a special player, but I guess I like Yang, let's put it that way. And for me, the swing thing is that he plays with a physicality. You kind of hit on that too.
Yes.
Like when he boxes out, he goes into it. Like he really approaches the game with physicality, his offensive moves, his finishing, like he's going to put his body into it. I'm very positive on Yang. And to me, the one drawback isn't so much. I think the defense will probably get there. It's just that he's so slow. Like you watch him move in these games, and it's like and anything that has to do with transition, like he's out of the play. Like just he's not even like he's got to get faster so that he's in more of these plays. Like he's got to play transition defense. He's got to play transition offense even as a trail. Like he's the kind of guy who's going to be a great rebounder and a great outlet passer. So that's going to take care of a lot of it, but not enough. Like he's going to have to get faster and for a 20-year-old like I think some of that comes, you get stronger, you get a little bit faster, you get a little bit more aware. Even if I think a lot of it is just like the first couple of steps, your team's got that defensive rebound, you got to turn and you got to go. Like I don't think he's like processing that. Like I think that could be almost like a mental thing that could speed him up. But like I feel
A
like he's
different
got to get faster. Like
a different role could help him with that, Kevin. Because at CBA he's a star of the team. He's playing 33 plus minutes. He's got to manage his effort level.
right.
Whereas on
That's
the
true.
Hawks, at the Hawks, even in the G League, like he's not going to be playing 30 minutes in the G League. Even like they're probably going to want him to play with that level of intensity. Because to me Yang's biggest beyond everything else was like offensively is all there. Like defensively, I wanted him to play with more physicality and effort. The physicality would be there when he's in position. When he's not in position, it's just like, well, the play's dead, and that can't happen in the NBA. Like, um, you got to play through the whistle on defense as a big because you never know how your size is going to affect the play, and so you just can't assume that the play is going to end just because a mistake happened or you made a mistake. You got to fight back to get in the proper position more often. And I think like the G League and the role that he'd be in with the Hawks, where he'd be a 12 to 15 minute per game player, that would really benefit him uh, to do what you're saying, where it's like play with more effort, play with more, uh, play faster, particularly in transition, because transition is so important. Like that, I think that's probably something we don't people just in general don't talk about enough. Like transition defense and offense is like how teams are winning and losing games in the NBA today. Nobody can score in the half court anymore. Half court defenses are so good, it's become almost impossible to get consistently good offense. So now you got to be able to get those 4-on-5 advantages in transition, and that I do think offensively he can help with that with his outlet passing, also his ability to bring the ball to the floor. Like that could be a weapon. But you're right, Kevin. He does need to play. He needs to play faster in transition, particularly on defense.
And I think for a lot of these bigs, like I'm really worried. Like some of these bigs, it's like he can't play pick and roll in the NBA. It takes him, it's 3 seconds before he can get to the rim. It's taking too long. Like there's a whole bunch of these bigs that are just not fast enough to play pick and roll in the NBA. I don't worry about that with Yang because he's such a gifted passer. Like even if he goes a little bit slow on it, like that's just going to open the short roll and he's seeing things and processing and he's big enough to catch wherever he is. Like I don't worry about that with him as much as I do with a lot of these guys. So like that the speed there isn't as much of a concern as it is in like just transition. Okay, I'm
Yeah, I
sorry.
look at this. I look at this class, and I think we've kind of touched on it before, but like there's a bit of philosophy or philosophical decision. You want to take a guy who has some natural offensive ability like Yang, and believe you can teach him to play defense. It might take a couple of years, whatever it might be, or take a guy who kind of gives you a high defensive floor. Like you go through the list. Like Queen has pretty good scoring instincts. It shows a little bit of playmaking. Defense is the concern that everyone talks about there. Common has the size that nobody else in this class has, right? And that's a great thing to start with there. Um, Sorber has good processing on both ends of the floor, and but can what kind of scheme do you want him to play in defensively? Wolf is prototypical offensively skilled big, right? And then, but there's comes back to the same question with Yang. Do you think you can get him to play enough defense to make it work? And Kalkenbrenner, a lot of rim protection, but he seems like he's kind of married to drop. And so um, maybe that's not right. Maybe 2 years from now we'll see these guys doing things that we haven't. We didn't begin to NBA. Some NBA development teams are borderline miracle workers with guys what they can get them to do if they just really really work at it. So for me, it really does come down to a philosophical question of I think it's hard. I think if you were to ask me, I think it's harder to take an offensive big who has almost no offensive skill and really move the needle on offense. I think that's very hard to do in an NBA context. Um, 10 years ago, everybody was just spamming middle pick and roll. That doesn't work anymore at all. That
Doesn't
just
work.
does not work anymore at all. You got to have some short roll. You got to have decent hands, all that sort of stuff. And so it's interesting to me to kind of look across this class and think, you know, at 20, if they want to take a center at 22, do they start with an offensive floor or defensive floor? Which way do they go? It's an interesting conversation to have. It's probably too long for one podcast.
Well, since this is, I think maybe this applies to bigs more than some other position. Let me ask you this question. How do you feel about moving up in this draft? Like, who are the bigs you think might not make it to 13, and are any of them worth making the investment of trying to move up from 13?
A big no, none. They're not.
That was my answer too.
No.
Same,
If you're
same,
moving
yeah.
up, it's got to be the only basketball player that is enticing me to move up is Con Knipple. Um, and you got to like just because I think the more I'm watching, the more I'm seeing like his ability to play with his shoulders on offense and move guys out of his way to get to his spots physically. That's not something you see that often, particularly for a guy that young. Like it's very Joe Johnson-y the way he kind of manipulates defenders with his shoulders to get to his spots and finish like with free space. So that's really the only guy because he's kind of the complete player on offense. He does everything well, except pull up shooting. Like he hasn't shown any real ability to make pull up jumpers, but I think that's a skill that he should be able to develop over time. Everything else is already there: the passing, the dribbling, processing. So if you're going to move up for a player, it's going to be for somebody like that who I think offensively has a chance to be a star in this league. Other than that, I don't see the value, especially with the big. The only big would be for common Malawatch, but man, Malawatch like he doesn't know what he's doing in drop coverage. It was all, he's at his best switching. And it's like, again, it goes to my point with Yang where he's like, okay, he's out in the perimeter. That's great. But if I have a big center, I want him around the rim all the time so he can affect shots. And to be around the rim all the time, you got to be able to play drop coverage. If you can't play drop, then we got to pair you with a power forward who probably is a weaker shooter. And so then we're not getting it's the Clint Capella phenomenon. Like, where it's like you have to play Capella, next, or at least reduce Capella. When Capella had his explosion, it was you could play him with a shooting big and it didn't matter because he could cover the whole floor. But the current version of Capella, where it's like he even in drop because he doesn't have the quickness to get from one side of the paint to the other side of the paint anymore. He's somebody on the back end to be a bigger physical player. And so like with Malawak to me, like he's too raw to trade up for a guy who I don't think is that much more talented than guys who are going to go later in the draft. So that's why I'm like big, no thank you. But like if you're trading up for a Concanopal, I'd be down depending on the price, of course. Which I don't think the Hawks going to be able to have the assets to get. Like 13 and 22 is not getting you into the top 10. Like it's just not.
No.
Teams don't care about multiple first round picks. They don't. They want star upside. If you
Sure.
get 13 and 22, you're probably not getting star upside, or at least with as much certainty as you are in the top 10. So I just don't see that happening.
Glenn, how do you feel about moving up for a big? Is there anybody that you would consider that for in this draft?
I Not for a big, not for me. I'm right there with you guys. I mean, I think moving up a few spots for CMB is that's I think that's I'm fine with that. I think he's an outlier defender in this
Yeah.
class, a true outlier defender with versatility he has and the size he has. Um, is somebody going to ask for 13 and 22 to go to 9, like that's too rich for me, and so it's just going to be if they can kind of figure that out. But I posted my 5 favorite players for 13, 22, and a trade up scenario to my Patreon today. That's a good response and conversation around it. um but for me, I think the center depth is just enough that you'll be picking for 3 to 4 guys at 22 if that's what you want to do.
Yeah.
And even if you want to try to get up into like 31 to 35, you're still going to have decent options there as well. Probably not guys that can play this year, um, at that level, at that point. But for me, I want two combo four. I kind of want two combo forwards, and if they go guard at 22, like because they really really think they need someone to come in and compete with Kobe, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. But for me, I want defense and size, and I want it, and that's my first preference. If they come away with Murray Boyles and Fleming, at 13 and 22, I'm going to be ready to throw a party. I have no idea how likely that is, but that's what they need. And that's when they lost Jalen, they were, we watched all the minutes of guys who were just not big enough
And
out there, from David Roddy, bless his heart, as they say in the South. I'm not in the South right now, but and just other guys who just didn't have the size to kind of go out and rebound and execute as low man and impact big cutters and all that sort of stuff. So that's where my head is. But if they feel like they need more, they want a guard they can develop offensively, like a combo guard they can develop offensively. Um, you know, I'm fine with that too.
Yeah, if Murray Boyles falls to 13, that I would be ecstatic. Um,
Yep.
Glenn, take who else do you want to introduce into this discussion besides Yang? Who's a big that
I mean,
you feel good
there's
about?
yeah, there's so many like the range of guys we could talk about is just enormous. I mean, have we talked about Carter Bryant? Like, is he going to get to 13?
I don't think we've talked about
Tyler,
him.
you think?
I
Is he
think
going
there's
to
a
get to 13? Yeah,
I
I
think
think
I
so.
think there's a chance he's there, but he has a lot of steam. Like I'm thinking he's killing it in workouts, but
Yeah.
I have concerns with Carter Bryant. But go ahead, Glenn. I want to hear what you got to say about him.
Yeah, no, I mean, but again, like I'm personally leaning more defense, rebounding, defensive versatility, but the Hawks at times didn't have enough offensive skill at the in the front court, and Carter Bryant, could shoot it. He has an offensive upside that's different than those other guys, and that might be worth um kind of leaning into. And the shot is still inconsistent right now, but I think if you read all the report, like the nerdy guys who can look at a shooting motion and say it's workable. NBA teams can work with it and things like that. It makes you feel a little bit better. So, um, he's one I'm like, does he go at like 7? Just because people like want a guy his size that can freaking shoot the basket. I believe in the future he'll be able to be a fairly high level shooter, or is he going to make it all the way to 13? That's a guy I'm really curious about.
I so like if he's there at 13, I'd have no problem taking him. I am worried about his offense in general, though. He did nothing for Arizona outside of open catch and shoot 3 pointers and cuts to the rim. And not to say he doesn't have more in his game, but like he's got a long way to go, even with the jump shot. Where it's not that the form is fine, isn't fine or anything. It's just like I need the volume there. He just has a long way to go on the offensive side of the floor. That said, like to me, I don't really care that much. The defense is like his havoc creation is really good. Like it's just really good.
Yep.
Now he's not like he's not fundamentally sound in certain ways though at the same time. Like I don't know if you want him guarding at the point of attack or anything, but like he has great hands, great feel, great timing. Like there's a lot of positives for him on the defensive side of the floor. With it combined with he does have a functional jump shot. Now, to me, I'm of the opinion of he didn't shoot it enough for me to think he can shoot it at an NBA level. Like he just didn't. He flat out just didn't do it much on offense for me to think that. But the upside is there. He has the pedigree as a highly touted freshman recruit. Um, and like he produced, like even in his limited minutes, he was a positive, like he was a very good basketball player, and like he would offer more size and defense. Which, to your point, Glenn, the Hawks, if they want to be a lot better, that's how you do it. And you go the route of trying to find offensive guards, maybe in free agency, because there's some good guys the Hawks may be able to get this. So like I like Carter Bryant, but I am he does his offense just does scare me. It's just like he did so little. Like it's just I think he averaged like 8 points or 6 points in college and only less than 20 minutes a game. Like I understand, he might not have been put in the best position, but you know, a better basketball players just play. The coach doesn't care. He just play them 33 minutes. Similar to what happened with Jace Richardson of Michigan State, who I know he's a guard, but like he that's somebody, if he's there at 13, you'd have to consider it. I understand the fit with Trey's a problem because he's the same height as Trey, but the shooting, the finishing at the rim, the explosion, uh, just his feel for the game on the offensive side of the floor, and he was a good defender at the college level. Like I think there's some real upside swing with Jace. To me, I'm like, if you like Reed Shepard last year for the Hawks, you like Jace Richardson as well. Like just because of how productive and how good he was for a Michigan State team that didn't want to start him. They didn't want to put the ball in his hands. Like he forced his way to being Michigan State's number one option because that's how well he played. And like to me, I'm like, if you're going to gamble on somebody who forced the issue because their coach, who I'm blanking on his name for some reason.
Wait, Izzo?
Like, yeah, Izzo. Like Tom Izzo
This,
didn't
this,
like
this
Tom,
little this guy's not famous at all.
Newcomer Tom Izzo?
yeah.
Yeah.
Tom Izzo doesn't just give the keys to a freshman. Like he has senior laden teams that he
Yeah.
wants them played certain ways. Famously, Jaren Jackson Jr. could only play like less than 23 minutes a game because it was a deep Michigan State team. Jace Richardson was in the Jaren Jackson role right up until Tom Izzo was like, I have to play this kid more because he's the reason why we're winning these games. And like that's where I'm like, okay, he was that good. I understand he's more of a combo guard than a pure point guard, but in today's NBA, honestly, in today's NBA, with how offenses are being ran, you can get away with that. And you know, when you have somebody like Dyson Daniels, who I think, to me, like if you want to get the best out of him offensively, probably needs the ball in his hands, and like somewhat you pair him next to a Jace Richardson, who's more of an off-ball scoring type of guard. Reminds me, um, goodness, I'm blanking on names, but there's been a lot of like these high scoring like smaller guards who've had successful NBA careers. I think Jace at bare minimum can be that, but he does have real star upside. So that's why I'm like, I know the fit isn't great, but like I would have to consider taking the gamble
Yeah, close the loop on Bryant. For me, I just think NBA teams look at his fluid athleticism and think, okay, we can if we can point him in the right direction and an NBA development environment, we think we can kind of get him to learn how to do the things that you do on offense, even though it might take a little while. But his like little things like his rebounding, his weak side rim protection, his instincts defensively are great. His versatility and switchability, he has that not a lot of other guys have. And so I do think it is like sort of defense first, but I think he's has some fluid athleticism that makes me think offensively he could come along. But that
But it's going to take
NBA
him a
teams are to decide
while.
for
Like he
themselves if they believe that or not. You know, Tyler, what do you think of Will Riley?
the Illinois.
Yeah,
Um, I wish the ball went in more, and the defense a concern. Like the only thing, honestly, the only thing I don't like is how skinny he is, and like you already have uh Zachary Reese, who's super skinny, and he's getting bigger. But Will Riley, like, I don't know if he'll ever put on the weight, and does he have the athleticism to be good on defense? But like offensively, because I read your report, and what I saw from him, like he's a very good finisher around the rim. And he's very good at like creating shots for himself at his size. Like I, it's a worthy gamble, especially at 22. Like who cares, you know?
Yeah, 22. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
22. Yeah, take if you like him enough. But to me, I'm like that's definitely an offensive first option. And for the Hawks, they need more offensive creation, and so like
Sure.
it's a worthy gamble at 22 to me. But I do ultimately wish he just shot it better from three, like just
Yeah.
flat out for what he is as a basketball player.
Yeah. To me, he's a little like McNeely, right? Both of them were known as good scorers, self creators at lower levels, but then they just didn't kind of click in the college system where but I mean Riley, you watch him play. I watched like 5 of his games, and he's a high level processor. I mean,
Yeah,
he knows what he's doing out there, and I think his game just fits NBA context better than college. Is it worth 13? I hope they can get a defender at 13. If he slides to 20, if he's available at 22, I'm pretty happy there. I know Hawks fans are starting to make some noise. Walter Clayton Jr. As well, who's an interesting guy there as well.
All right. Well, I appreciate you doing this. And it's such a flat draft that we're all over the place. But thank you for doing it.
Absolutely.
And good night, Bob.
good
Bye,
night,
Bob.
Bob.